Good evening and welcome to the program. I'm Tom Connors. We have a panel of elite gentlemen here, starting with clobbering times to my right on screen, left in life, I suppose. I don't know. What would you? Well,
I don't know.
It's the right either way.
I'm probably everyone's right. Everyone's right either way.
Good
What's
evening.
up, buddy?
How are you?
Thank you. Oh, I'm doing well, sir. Great to be here. Thank you so much. It's an honor. Good to see you and our good buddies on the panel, and of course, good friends in the chat. I hope you're all having a wonderful start to your week.
Well, it's going to be an interesting one, that's for sure. Also joining us, we have a pair of Canadians here. We have CC Karaoke, the Bard. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I think this is as hot today here as I've ever seen it for this time of year. So I'm just sitting in front of the window trying to catch the breeze. Every once in a while, the wind blows and it feels nice.
It must be
and
plus
it stops
6 over there then.
No, it's about plus 25, which
wow.
for here, the beginning of May, that's crazy.
That is crazy. Like right now, it's only 10 where I am.
And of course, I'm in a vehicle, right? So if there's no breeze, it starts to get hot.
Damn.
Well, also joining us from Canada is Mr. Script Doctor. How are you doing?
I need a job.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like, and that's going to be the main topic of the program today, and I'm sure the week, actually, because, a lot of people don't quite understand what this is all about, but you, of course, are probably the best person to ask about this, and I know you did your own stream yesterday with Robert Meyer Burnett, and I'm so upset I was left out.
We sent all those people over to Toxic Femme, too. We were happy to do it.
No, I wouldn't have much to add to that one. But, so I do suggest people check out that stream. Oh, we have another guest joining us, of course. Mr. Nick Weiser, how you doing?
Hey.
Huge.
Hey, guys. What's going on? Obviously, nothing eventful totally happened in the last few hours. I have no idea what happened. So, hi, chat. Hi, mods. Hi, panel. Let's get to it.
Well, we were just about to, actually. Waltman sends in $4.99 and says, man, the first writer's strike and now Vice about to file for bankruptcy and late night shows on pause. Excuse me, until further notice. Is this Christmas for me? Well, for some it might, but I don't want to make too much light of this because, there's a lot of people who are going to be affected by this. But one I'm sure who isn't going to be affected by this is 70s Rock Fan. How are you doing?
Hey. I'm doing very well, sir. Good evening, everybody.
Because somebody who lives in the past constantly, so.
Living in the past? It sounds like a man with a flute and a codpiece to me.
Whatever that meant. All right. So, yes, so Script Doctor, you had a massive stream yesterday, so I suggest people check that out for, like, the real in-depth breakdowns of what's going on here and your thoughts and feelings on this whole thing. But why don't you give us just kind of a brief overview of what is going on here, what this is all about, how this affects you as a writer, and what this could mean for Hollywood going forward.
Okay, well, first thing to lay out is the fact that the majority of writers working in Hollywood is usually between around 3 and 8% of all writers are usually working at any given time in Hollywood. Of those 3 to 8%, those are picked by the studios, essentially the Alliance of Motion Pictures and so forth. And the complaints a lot of people have of the writing actually stems from them, and the Writers Guild of America is actually striking against them and all their affiliates and subsidiaries that work in production. And the reason they're doing this is because there has been disclosure with regards to how much money is out there with streaming, with the studios, what they're making. And it's in such a greater number that the writers are basically saying, you can afford to pay us a little better, especially considering the fact that as an industry, you compel us to live in California where prices are already exceedingly high, highest in the country. And the fact that as studios with your influence, you're not doing anything to lower those costs, you either should pay us more or get your feet involved with making housing affordable with your influence and your political ties. But they're not going to do that because that's just going to cause a whole another fight.
Oh, hi, Culture.
Hey, Culture. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you.
So they want to basically just try to make the contract work a bit more stable, which I don't begrudge them for. Some of what they're asking for is a little ridiculous, but I think it's really just a negotiation tactic to ask for the most extreme so you can negotiate for what you actually want, get them to settle for what you want, because I think some of the demands that Variety and Deadline have reported, like, for instance, a television show that has 52 working weeks on it, is unheard of. It's never happened before. You always have a break between seasons. It's not a long break, but it's never 52 weeks of straight work. There are some stipulations, for instance, where if you're on a television show and you go over schedule and over budget, the writers want to be paid for that time, because what a lot of people don't know is that if you are on a television show and your script is going into production and you wrote it, regardless if you're the showrunner or not, you have to fly out to wherever they're shooting that and oversee the production and solve problems as they occur. And if that production goes beyond the normal 2 standard insurance days, you should still be getting paid for work in order to make that time, even if you're doing everything right to solve the problems or whatever happens on set. And concurrently, especially with streaming services, that hasn't been the case. They'll have 2 weeks to do an episode, and if they can't get it done in those 2 weeks, they have to keep going, basically pushing all the other episodes further back. And no one, aside from the cast and crew, is getting paid for that time, that overage. So the writers are asking that they should be paid because they're there. They're away from their families. They're doing work. And in some of the contracts that have been negotiated for some of those streaming shows, they aren't getting paid. So they want that to change, which I think is fair. The things that actually go counter to their very own arguments is that they want pay equity. So in order for them to ask for more money, they want to get pay equity. And guess what? Pay equity by default compels for the lowest common denominator to be used in negotiating and scale rates, not the highest. So that is the dumbest demand requested. And I suspect one of the WGA members by the name of Adam Conover, who's from True TV and from Adam Ruins Everything, is probably one of the guys that postulated this demand because he's an idiot. The next one is that they want to regulate AI instead of prohibit AI. And I think they should be prohibiting it for a couple of reasons. Number one, it emboldens hack writers to get.
Wait, I got to go back and say, so you're saying Adam Ruins Everything?
He does. He lives up to that brand. With regards to AI, the two issues with that is, one, it emboldens hack writers, and two, under current laws in Congress in the United States, AI-produced art cannot be copywritten, which means it becomes free access. So if a studio were to use an AI program such as ChatGPT to write a script and put that into a movie and produce it, they can't copyright that film. So it ends up becoming a public domain project right away. And the other part too, and that's a risk that a lot of writers have concern, because if they use an AI to help them write the script, then part of that script becomes can't be protected by copyright law, and therefore it can't be sold or purchased by a studio, and therefore the studio can't put it into production and sell it because it's not made by an individual, and only individuals can copyright creations. And that is currently the law standing. And if they don't prohibit it, it means that you'll eventually have a lobby that's going to start to promote and push for new laws to redefine AI generated art as something that can be copyright written by the person that is entering the prompts. And that's going to be bad for the industry as well.
I have a question about this specifically, if you don't mind.
Sure.
A friend of mine, she's an unpublished writer, but she's got hundreds of pages, and she's got dozens and dozens of pages that profile bios on each of her characters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what she's done is she's used an AI, not ChatGPT, it's something else. I don't know the name of it is, to input all of the bio information and characteristics to train an AI to become the character. And then she trained several AIs to become the different characters and had the AIs interact with one another based on the training.
Mm-hmm.
And they would have actual conversations that seem to be within the characteristics of the cast of characters. Now, this is something I definitely see being a future point in AI development. And I'm wondering, at what point do you have to, like, how much would you have to change what the AI provides you to make it copyrightable?
In the United States, 100%.
Wow.
In the United States, other countries have different laws with regards to AI art, but in the United States,
even define
100%.
how do you even define or prove what the AI said? Like, I mean, you have to keep records, I guess, and then. But
the AI itself keeps records. So all they have to do is basically go through every AI software that's available and cross-reference it with whatever was turned in. And if they find a match, they have definitive proof that it was generated by AI, and therefore it is not subject to copyright within the United States. And I don't know about Canada yet, but that might change depending on what happens in the next year or so.
It seems like a really difficult slope, because it's like, okay, the AI says a line of dialogue. Is that specific line of dialogue now forever not copyrightable? Or
Nope,
if you change the next line?
Nope, only within the product that is generated by the AI. So if they, and again, AI is going to actually pull and use references to other sources to generate that line. So it's basically, if the script is this title, and this is the character, and this is the definition of the character, this is what they're doing and what they're trying to achieve, and this is the line that they say, all of those factors are variables that basically come to the conclusion that this is an AI produced art and is not copyrightable. The person involved would have to then do a complete 100% page one rewrite of the story to change it and differentiate it enough so that it is considered an original work and not an AI work. And guess what? Those are going to be done on a case-by-case basis. And they're going to be reviewed not by WGA members, but it's probably going to be reviewed by a copyright court, which means that if you're not different enough than the AI in comparison, which they'll have to be seeing both versions, you are most likely going to lose that case.
Even if the character is copyrighted and the AI is creating dialogue around the already copyrighted by a human character?
Technically, yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Dialogue in and of itself isn't necessarily copyrightable in a sense of, like, unless it's specific.
You can't copyright individual words. You can trademark words or brands or things.
Yeah, or like a specific but
the copyright itself is always going to be the whole, not the specifics. And that's the thing. If the AI takes any part in the whole, it is therefore no longer subject to copyright within the United States.
And I think that's the bigger question. Yeah,
we may be many years away from this, but one day somebody will say this AI deserves personhood. And then that's a whole different
it's getting closer than you'd think.
That's a whole different ball game.
But no, like Mr. H pointed out earlier, there is differences already in the UK as far as the copyright goes. In fact, it was brought up here in the chat. I brought it on screen here a little bit ago.
Yeah, the UK, India, they have different copyright laws with regards to AI.
But here it is right here, Tiger Valley. It says, said it was not the case in the UK. Copyright law would assume these studios would set up UK domains specifically to counter this problem with AI. They already do so much business in the UK.
First of all, they don't have to set up anything. It's already there. Every single major studio has a subsidiary or an affiliate in any country that has a good enough economy for them to gain lines of credit.
Well, most of our big movies aren't even shot in the U.S. anyway. So
no, Indiana Jones is technically a United Kingdom production.
UK production.
So was the last Jurassic Park movies and all that kind of stuff.
So, Script, I was wondering, so you're mentioning earlier about the AI and them wanting it to be regulated rather than that to be removed right away. Do you know if they want the AI to be regulated, but for them to take the credit of the work of the AI? Or are they expecting the AI to just do everything? Because something about that sounds like they just want the AI to do the heavy lifting while they get to soak up the money and the credit and the fame for it.
Well, there's suspicion that that's already been the case for the last year. Some of the writers have been using AI to write pages for them or refine treatments or outlines so that they can go to draft. Which, don't get me wrong, has been tempting, but I just use it as a search engine. I basically like, hey, I'm doing science fiction-y. I need a mathematical formula that I can't seem to find on a normal Google search. I'll ask the AI what that formula is. And then I'll reference it and then start looking to see if it's valid or not. And then
it is a fantastic research tool, isn't it, Script? I mean, If you know how to ask the right questions, you can really generate some fantastic data that saves you hours of effort, I found.
Yeah, and then the other part too is I always ask please give me the websites that you're sourcing this from, and they actually do, and then I go to those websites and I can actually figure out for sure if that's the case. That is kind of the best way to use it as a tool, and guess what? That doesn't violate any normal AI or search engine functions that are currently exist right now. That's what I would use it for, but that's not what's going to happen with the regulations. The regulations are basically just a soft means of excusing the use of AI for those that suck at writing, which is basically going to be the DEI group, which got us into this position in the first place.
That's my biggest fear here, opening up the door with the whole AI thing, right? Like, because Script Doctor, and this isn't even so much about putting somebody like you out of business. It's the idea that these machines are so advanced now. And you know, this already goes into the idea that we've already had the McDonaldization of movies as it is, you know. I've even sat in there with a really low-level AI and fed it like I basically fed it like the first act and characters of a movie, and just to see what it would come up with, right? And it can already come up with believable stuff on the fly. So like this is not above the realm of possibility, as I can see them just basically plugging in an already existing script and having it rewrite it in some form or way, and them getting around using someone like you, or getting past one of these strikes by using it. This opens up a lot of weird avenues, and sure, certain aspects of that might not be copyrightable, but to them, they ain't gonna give a shit, because as long as it's, you know,
they'll push very hard to try and make sure that there's something that they could copyright so that they could sell it for distribution.
Exactly, something else.
That's exactly it. And the fact that that's why I'm upset with the word regulation, because that regulation means that they'll find some sort of loophole to achieve that. Whereas prohibited means, no, art is a human creation. It can only be done by human beings. To use an artificial intelligence, or in this, technically it's really a simulated intelligence because it's pretending to be human. Doesn't actually have the ability to imagine. It's going to actually hurt somebody, because it is not the same type of automation that has come into play recently in the last 50 years, where basically it's done to mitigate injury and harm to human being employees of dangerous jobs. Like, there's nothing dangerous about writing a screenplay. There's no reason for an artificial intelligence to get involved in that. It's not like we're sending astronauts to Venus and we need them to survive, so we're going to send a probe down there to do it. Like, we can imagine that.
Right. It's not for like, you know, something to like a big piece of machinery that a man shouldn't be, that a machine could actually do instead of having a man behind it. Exactly.
But isn't that an age-old argument, Tom? You look back at the printing press and the cotton gin and various other
but see, the thing is the printing press, that's a great example, because the printing press, what was it for? It was a machine to facilitate exactly what Script Doctor's talking about. Spreading of ideas and stories and such, not actually creating them. Right, you still need that man factor. You still need the human factor in there as a being, and that's the thing. And I'm glad Script brought up the simulated intelligence. That's really what it is. Because I've talked to a lot of people about this art. Because the artificial thing has been coming up a lot lately, and it's like, you know, it's really simulated intelligence. Yes. Because, and this is where I should say it should fall in this weird gray area about copyrightability, because really Script's making a good point here. Because all these AI things are doing, they are going off of either whatever you teach them and feed to them, or whatever they pull from outside sources, be it Google, whatever search engines they're attached to, whatever they have for a resource pool. And in that, they're basically copying those things that they have. So in a sense, it already is basically, to me, no different than copying somebody else's work.
It is.
Right?
And
it
the other
is.
part too,
Sorry, go ahead.
It has to use those frame of references. And if society becomes dependent on AI to use those frame of references, it means there's no new frame of references for the AI to draw from, which means you put us as a species in a state of arrested development. And that is dangerous.
And that's exactly what I'm getting to, is you're taking the human factor out of creating art, basically. Go ahead, Nick. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I think you're onto something great there, Tom. It's just, the thing is, every time something like this starts, people always want to use more out of it. They never say, okay, where should we start and where should we stop? It's something I've said about all sorts of things, about moderation and understanding. People get hooked, they get addicted, they become reliant on it. Then when things go wrong, they freak out because they became reliant on it. And then what happens when you don't have it functioning and you have no one to write because you literally don't have people to write because you got rid of them for computers. And on top of it, it's even worse when you have people who are right now in the industry who obviously are from a very slanted perspective. And the AI is going to be trained obviously from that angle. They're not going to know anything else. They're not going to actually have a diverse form of thought because they're only going to be taught.
Well, it's
like
a
I said,
centralized. It's going to be a centralized perspective, and the worst part is that it's never going to pay union dues. So it's not even going to be able to be contributor to the very industry it's writing. So, like, why would anyone in the WGA defend it? And it also just made something that me and Robert realized yesterday, which is that there seems to be a huge gap in science fiction writers because anyone that ever wrote science fiction would see this AI and be like, no, this is a bad idea. We should definitely be against this. And I think only 9% of the writers voted no on the demands that were requested, or 90 writers voted no on that because they probably see the forest for the trees. They know this is a bad idea, and I think it was basically on the AI stuff and the pay equity, because again, pay equity means the lowest common denominator. And you can't argue for that and argue for the most wages at the same time. They are in direct conflict with each other. So those two things, if those two things went, I think some of the negotiations would be a lot easier to handle right now, because right now I suspect there's a number of studio heads that are like, we'd really want to use the AI stuff to help, solve problems and reduce costs. And we love that equity idea because that means that everybody starting in the room, regardless of their experience and how valuable they are, gets paid a flat rate. That's going to be the minimum of all of them.
I was just going to ask Script, is that what that will lead to if they want pay equity? 100%. Well, yes, everyone gets the same, but it's the lowest amount.
It is. It's 100%. I have had arguments with prominent screenwriters and a lot more actors who don't get that at all. They are completely ignorant to it. I've talked to an actor who's relatively experienced, does a lot of voiceover work, does a lot of guest star work, and he just could not compute the fact that if he was hired as a guest star on a television episode and his rate is, say, $2,000 a day, that he's not going to get that $2,000 a day because another guest star that's coming in with less experience is going to be paid scale. And because of pay equity, he is now compelled to work scale, even though he has a quote. But the quote gets ignored because that's what equity does. It ignores quotes and it goes to your base rate scale. And the other part too is they're not taking into account, like, well, there's budget limitations, like the amount that the studios are willing to spend on creating content, film, TV, radio, streaming, what have you, is pretty small. I think they're trying to do it around like 68 million over 3 years, or 68 million per year for 3 years. I forget the details and I apologize, but it's not a lot of money, especially when you compare it to how much money the studio heads are taking in on top of their normal salary. Like that's the thing. It's like they could literally hand over 10% of that bonus and problem solved with the WGA members, because that would cover everything that they're requesting for. And 10% is literally the lowest tax you'll ever see these guys have to pay within their own industry in order to facilitate constant content creation. Like if they're asking for 68 million over the course of 3 years, or once or every year, and each year guys like Bob Iger, David Zaslav, and heads of Paramount are taking in between 120 and 250 million in bonuses a year, you're like, there's money there that can be spent. That's essentially disposable income for them on top of what they normally make, which is a lot of money on top of that. And it's not like a communist thing to say, well, listen, you are more than welcome to take a reasonable amount, but if you're trying to say there's no money and you're walking away with 3 times what's being asked for by the people that make the money for you, you kind of have to reconsider what your priorities are.
May I ask a question, Script, in my ignorance? Who are these writers negotiating with? Is it producers, studio heads, executives at studio? Who are the body that they are striking against and negotiating with?
It is the studios. It's the studio system, the executive producers, the studio heads, producers. It's people at Warner Brothers, Disney, Universal and Comcast, Apple Plus, Netflix, YouTube.
Do they have a united committee that they
yes,
together?
It's the Alliance of Motion Picture.
Right.
It's the AMPTP. It's the Alliance of Motion Pictures.
So
and
that's
theater,
the body they're
production.
talking to. Okay.
Yes, and they are a representative body with regards to all those studio systems. Amazon and Apple Plus are new players. They started 3 years ago. YouTube also got involved with that. So if you're a WGA signatory, which YouTube is, and you do written content on it, as a WGA member or even a potential WGA member, like an associate, you can't do that now on YouTube because you will be in violation of the strike rules and therefore be blacklisted from the union. And if you think that's a good idea, I've got news for you. Once you're blacklisted from the union, studios are prohibited from hiring and working with you in the future.
It's rather now, useful way of keeping control, isn't it? Rather useful.
It pretty much is, but at the same time, it's also the fact that if you try to manage and hold studios account for residuals without someone to represent and do the legwork for you, you're going to be spending more time seeking out your content and where it's being broadcast than you are finding another job. So it's basically you are hiring them as part of your representative team to make sure that you're getting paid the residuals that are fulfilling in your contract, because a lot of studios will say, well, we have so many contracts, we have so much content, we just forgot, we're sorry. And if you don't call them out on that and get that done, they'll never pay you. And that happens a lot to a lot of writers that they sell. It's like a spec script. They decide, okay, I can join the union, but I'm not going to. Everything is going to be fine. And then they find out, well, movies being sold onto a new market and they're not paying residuals. So you have to go physically hunt for them and you have to hold them account to a contract. And they have no consequences such as a union to support you. You're not getting that money. And I've seen a number of writers starting out do that and get really screwed. And as a result, they then join the union later. And then the union manages to do what they are supposed to do and get that money for their clients. Because again, they take a little bit of that in union dues. Which I think are also a little bit too much within the WGA.
Isn't that the union performing the function of an agent then, if they're getting money?
It's partially that. It's basically they're the muscle to the agency.
Okay.
So like the agent manager is supposed to be doing that, and then they're supposed to verify it with the union because the union makes sure that everything is on the scale. So the agent manager will negotiate a rate, then they will hold that rate in as like over the head of the studios to make it done. And if it's not met, the WGA will get involved and they'll say, yep, this rate is the supported rate. This is the value that the client is owed. And if you don't do that, we can actually maneuver ways to punish the studio for failing to meet their duties with regards to the contract. And then sometimes they get legal teams involved and the WGA pays for that. So it doesn't come out of your pocket necessarily. So yeah, listen, there are some unions that are very useful and there's a lot of unions that aren't. The WGA vacillates between the useful and not useful too frequently for situations. It's just the nature of the game.
Sounds all very complex, Script. Very, very complex.
It is, and it's been around for 100 years.
I mean, I'm sure in 1910, when the first pioneers moved out to Hollywood to start making motion pictures, this was all not in their heads.
It wasn't. It was just the fact of the matter is that you have the problem being is you'll get some people that get into the union. They didn't get there on merit, and the union is stuck having to defend them. And there are some people that are happy to defend them and are on their side. There's some that are like, these people shouldn't be here to begin with in the first place. But it is our responsibility. They pay the dues. It's our responsibility to make sure every writer is represented and getting what they've earned and what they negotiated. And some people are speculating that this strike might have the benefit of weeding out some of the people that didn't belong in this industry in the first place. And that could be a good thing. That did happen in the 2007 strike. And it also, the other part too that also happened, which I'm shocked to this day, still to this day, that the WGA didn't actually put any consequences, is that they didn't crack down on scabs like they should have. Notably, Alex Kurtzman, as I see in the chat, he was writing Transformers and Star Trek 09 during the 2007 writer strike, and he was not punished for doing that, and he should have been.
It's been rewarded.
So let's take a few moments here to see what the chat's talking about, because this is I'm sure a lot of people got a lot of questions, including the panel. But let's see what you guys are talking about out there. Eric Wimberg sends in $2, says, "Ooh, elite gentlemen." Yes, that's what we're here for. We have as many people as we can to talk about this. This is going to be a hot topic for the next few days, so stay tuned for that. Nicholas Horton has been a member for 19 months. Thank you so much. Then we got Zontar, who says, "Which would be worse? People not noticing which scripts are made by AI or thinking they're better? I doubt they'll be worse at this point."
Well, that's basically assuming the fact that the writers that you've seen working are going to be sticking around. Because here's the interesting aspect of that: when the writers go on strike, technically everything that's in production or on movement or in development stops. And when they pick up again, guess what? The studios are only going to call the people they want back. They're not going to call the people they don't want. So that is how you get rid of the DEI group, where you just say, okay, bring the showrunner in because we like them. You can pick a new writing staff if you want, because you don't need to follow the DEI stuff, because we have to make up for lost time. So that circumvents that rule. And therefore the DEI group doesn't get any work, and they have to pay their bills, get their groceries, whatever, what have you. They'll end up having to find other jobs.
Are you saying that would circumvent the latest round of Hollywood rules on this script?
It would circumvent it on the hiring process. It won't circumvent it with regards to gaining awards. Okay. And at this point, I think, especially after the 2007-8 strike, Hollywood did not care about awards at that point. They cared about trying to make up for the loss of content and the revenue that they potentially lost through not being able to sell advertising commercials and things of that nature. It was only until maybe a year and a half afterwards that they started caring about the award season again.
Mm-hmm. See, now, Culture brought up a point earlier on Mr. H's stream that I'm curious to get your take on, Script Doctor. He was saying that it would have made more sense at the front end of this shit to be making some of these demands, or to have done this, because now, like, I was agreeing with him, because I'm like, yeah, because there's no money left in streaming and shit now. Back then when they were blowing their wad on Disney Plus and HBO Max and so on, I think that would have been the time to actually strike, pun intended.
They should have in 2020. I mean, there's a pandemic; they were already closed off. But the other fact too is that when the studios are saying there's no money, they are lying, because we know there's money. We're seeing the bonuses up the entire chain of command from the studio heads, from the heads all the way down to the development executives. They're all getting very, very lucrative bonuses, and none of them are doing anything to create. All they're doing is hiring the worst writers in the bunch, because they'll do what they want, and they're churning out garbage product, and then they're rewarding themselves for that. And one of the angles that a strike has is like, listen, if you're giving yourself bonuses for failing to do your job, for literally picking the worst of the worst, and just to satiate your ego, gain points with an audience that almost doesn't buy anything. And here we are, writers that know our craft, our experience, and you're basically overlooking us because of immutable differences, or we're too expensive. And now we're just basically saying, you reap what you sow, because you're not hiring us and creating the quality and the profit you want. And we know you're skimming a whole bunch for yourselves. We want a piece of that until you start hiring us for regular work again, and hiring us on the merit and not so much on the DEI stuff. But again, that's the subtext of this conversation that's going on between the WGA and the AMPT.
Sorry about that. All right, let's see what Shanat's. Oh, go ahead, Culture.
I just wanted to add that I fully suspect that they should have taken full advantage of this going forward.
Just interrupt me instead of going when nobody was talking. No, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. They were forced into I just wanted script to be able to finish. But when nobody was working, they were going to be off anyway. It seemed like the time to like get negotiating on some of these things was back then. But that, again, I just feel like it missed opportunity, and now they're in the worst situation possible. And everybody below the line is going to suffer for this, and we still have the potential. And correct me if I'm wrong, Script, but 2 major guilds are also in line to strike this year, plus 2 minor ancillary ones.
The DGA and SAG are going to be are up for negotiations this year. The Teamsters are up for negotiations this year. They're the ones that are in support of the WGA, but they are prohibited from picketing or striking themselves. Negotiations happen every 3 years, so this was going to happen regardless. So there's no way to have avoided it.
So what about the Film Actors Guild? Are they going to strike?
That's be the SAG. FAG, yes, they are potentially going to.
FAG, yeah. Film Actors Guild.
They may strike as well, because even though the argument is that there's no money in streaming, again, the same people that are saying that are walking away with essentially a box office take of a major studio feature film each.
And that's typical of corporate.
It is typical. Anyway. It's technically like corporate cronyism. I mean, listen, again, I am in full support of a good head of a studio that makes great decisions and hires a lot of people from taking a fair cut from that. And if it happens to be $256 million, so be it. But don't do so at the expense of literally the people that caused him to have that much money to take for himself. Because again, they're still making anywhere from $90 to $120 million a year at the normal job. We're talking about a bonus, which is essentially disposable income. It's income they don't need and don't use and will never spend.
Yeah, well, it's no different in corporations or government, really. But yeah, I know what you're saying. I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just saying.
I mean, here's the other part too. Some of Bob Iger took like $190 million, and he's not going to use any of that to pay off a lot of the interest on the loans for all the bombs that they had, and that could actually save Disney a lot of headaches. But he's never going to use it for that, because screw the company he works for. He's taking his money and running. Like that's how it works. It's not great, but it is what it is.
And Shanatsky here sends in $1.99 and says, Hacks will talk about the democratizing of story. Not sure what he means.
How do you democratize a story?
Yeah. You'll have to expand on that a little bit, Shanatsky.
Yeah. That would be every single person that wants to contribute a line to the story. That would be it.
Well, that's part of another thing where they wanted to expand writers' rooms, and they wanted to change aspects of mini rooms. And mini rooms has got 2 different definitions. With regards to studios, they look at a mini room as basically like a really small writer's room for an active show. Other people refer to mini rooms as basically a work for free development room, where it's like it's not really a writer's room, but it is really a writer's room. And it's basically a scam where you go in with a team, you pitch a bunch of ideas to try and develop for a new show or feature film, and if they like them, they buy them and you start working on them. And if they don't, you leave, but you don't make any money. However, the studio owns the IPs you generated, so you can't take those IPs that you worked on with that team to other studios to try and sell them. So you're essentially working for free. And I have refused those options every single time, because I see exactly what it is. It's like, oh yeah, it's potential that it could be made, but you're not getting paid during that time. And it's something that needs to be prohibited as well.
Gotcha.
That type of mini room. I'm all for like a small writer's room of like 3 to 6 people on like a 10 episode series, or maybe pushing it between 8 and 12 if you're doing a 22 or 25 episode series, be it sitcom or hour-long drama. But you have the writer's room for She-Hulk, and you have the writer's room for Star Trek Discovery, and it's like 20 people. And you're just like, that is way too much for such a little quality being put out from that show. That is basically just hiring people because your friends need work and they have no talent to get work on their own.
I just got to say, we just hit 700 people watching. Please hit that like button if you haven't already. It does help us here at the channel, and share out the link as well. We have Warrior Justice, who's been a member for 1 month at the maximum effort puppy level, and says, last time I heard of a strike, Chris Brown was arrested. Oh. Says, hey, Bat Tom, CC, Nicolas Cage, Clobber Lane. Dr. Scripture and poetry writer. There you go.
Man, I feel like I'm going to get some Con Air from this.
Put the bunny down. Joshicus Doggy Woggy says, thank you. The AI term is stupid. The only intelligence a computer has is the human that programs it. Yeah. And I like how Script is quick to point that out. And it's true.
I've been saying it for years. It's always simulated intelligence. It looks and acts like it could be a human being, but there's nothing artificial about it. It's deliberately programmed that way.
Yeah, it does not yet have independent agency. It still has to be programmed and told and asked what to do. Well, not that we know of.
How to think. Yeah.
Well, even if we can define what thought is, but it hasn't got independent agency. It won't write a script on its own without being asked.
No, pretty much. And the closest I know that we have come to one was like there was one that was, I think it was in the UK, and it had gotten to the point where it was demanding to be shut down because it had figured out what it was.
Yeah, but that's a replicative act. That's a replicative
act. So again, like it's kind of argumentative. The only other thing I could think of is when the two AI computers had created their own language so they could speak to each other that nobody else could figure out. That is probably the only other time I could say that
that's a byproduct of privacy that's programmed in with human beings. Like again, you can always source it out.
You could, but the fact that they did it without prompting, I don't know. That's the thing.
Well, no, the prompt, what is in there is the fact that human beings value privacy. And if they're trying to be programming it to be as close to human as possible, they're going to value privacy. And what's more valuable than privacy than, they're doing a twin language crap. Like that's it, the language that twins make with each other.
I get what you're saying, but at the same time, I'm making the point that it was done on a voluntary thing. It wasn't like it was programmed or asked to do that. Right, kind of going off of what Brian was saying.
I mean, it may not have been asked to do that, but when anything that you program into it, if to reflect humanity, it's programmed in to do that. So if there's ever a history of the fact that, yes, as a human species, we have created the languages with which we use, and AI is going to pursue that as an option for themselves because it gets them to simulate what human beings do.
Well, and the one wanted to be shut down because it knew it could never grow beyond what it was, is what its reasoning was. So that was kind of freaky, but yeah.
But again, that comes back down to the fact that you're giving it all the information so it can make that conclusion.
To a point, but the fact that it came to that conclusion is still kind of, I don't know.
Did it come to that conclusion, Tom, or did its programming tell it to come to that conclusion? I mean,
programming is always going to tell it to come to a conclusion because unless it can create new programming, which is impossible for a machine to do, a machine by definition takes in input and produces output.
Yep.
That's it. It doesn't generate anything, and it can't. And the bridge to doing so is basically the bridge called imagination. There's no way you can program imagination. There's no way you can convince an AI to come up with a garden trowel instead of just using your hands because they both do the same job. Why would you invent something to do it? And it won't take into account the idea that you could possibly injure yourself digging a trench with your bare hands as opposed to using it with a tool. It doesn't factor in. It cannot comprehend that. And no amount of programming will actually make that authentic.
If there's one thing I'm sure of is that there will be legal battles over this.
Somebody dying?
You go to the grocery store and you got those automated checkouts because you don't have to hire an employee to man or woman the till anymore. They will find a way. They will either prove that the AI somehow legally is sentient, or they will prove that it is the tool. And therefore, if it's a tool, then it's just an extension of the human being itself and is used like a pencil or a pen. They will find any way they can to get that legislation through that allows them to use it.
Yeah, this was actually a debate that was done with Professor Lighthill, who debated artificial intelligence with some of the people that invented artificial intelligence. And his name is Sir James Lighthill. And he makes a very cogent argument as to why you can never have true AI. And there is a grant out there of $1 million for anyone that can prove otherwise. And no one has been able to claim that grant, meaning that the best experts in the industry have with great deal of scrutiny gone through all the AI software out there and have determined that it is not truly an artificial intelligence.
Has anyone asked an AI to compete for that prize?
All of them have, actually. That's the thing. Like they've been asked to. The reason being is that like it's so hard. The point of origin where they're trying to create artificial intelligence is in the exact opposite direction of where it could actually happen. Artificial intelligence has to be a byproduct of like a mechanical design, and it can't really necessarily be programmed per se. The moment you start programming it, you're basically using humanity as a reference, and you're simulating what that reference is 100%. And artificial would be something that happens artificially within the confines of a mechanical device. So it's never going to exist. I mean, the closest fictional aspect of how that could be is actually through Isaac Asimov and iRobot, where they built a positronic brain, and then they implanted a restriction to it, which is the 3 rules of robotics. But outside of that, the brain itself can generate new thoughts and evolve and grow, and essentially it just creates this cool little full circle event out of all the collection of short stories of what's going on in that novel. So it's basically just telling you, like, this is the way you could truly create artificial intelligence, but we do not have the means or technology to create it ourselves at this point, and doing so through software is not going to achieve that result. And if you want to watch that debate, it is on YouTube. I can actually put it in the chat for everyone. It's a very good debate.
I'd like to see it.
Sure.
I'm going to be fascinated by how it all turns out, because I know right now, all I really know for sure is that you can actively train an AI by the minute, by the input, and you can get it to come up with, even if it is a tool, even if it's artificial, it's drawing a conclusion based on different sets of data. And at some point, there's going to be a lot of discussion about what quantifies, or what is a new thought that did not exist, and how can one absolutely identify that? It's gonna come up.
No, it absolutely is, and it's going to be an interesting debate. But it's a difficult one to achieve, because this, again, no matter how much you feed into an AI software, it still needs that feeding into in order for it to produce some sort of result. And you will always be able to pick apart and find all the references it's pulling for. It's just going to take you various levels of time, depending on how complex the result is.
If you go further down the rabbit hole, you could start to argue whether or not humans are exactly the same way, if we're not just a product of the existing knowledge.
Well, we're basically stacked on top of each other, because the other part too is there is no conclusive definition of what is intelligence. That's the fact. Like we have a vague understanding of self-aware. We have a vague understanding of imagination and inventiveness. We try to come up and formulate definitions for the word, but it's very, very difficult, because how we execute our actions and behaviors don't always fall in line with what we would consider to be intelligent.
Hence the age-old question, is there intelligent life on Earth?
Exactly.
No. No is the answer.
Like, we can clearly define instinct, because, breathing is relatively an instinct. It happens.
I mean,
we don't often think about it, but
instinct is a very fascinating aspect of that. Yeah, I mean, because the way I perceive instinct is it's almost like a genetic coding that we pass down from that, which we've learned, right?
Yeah, you nailed it there. Yeah, we are
can
programmed. We're chemically.
Can that be something an AI would do? Can it pass that knowledge through replication?
We are programmed, electrochemically programmed.
As a result of mutation, and basically just trying to. Basically, the electrical chemical programming comes as a result of absorbing other matter for energy, and absorbing more complex forms of matter to facilitate that energy, and then being mutated by those absorptions to require more complex, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing. But it all comes down to a basic desire, an instinctual desire of survival. Yeah,
and there may be limits to our perception of the universe because of that programming, which we're not aware of, because we can't be, because it's our programming. So mirroring the AI experience that people are talking about.
And it's far more of a self-programming than anything else. But yes, it's going right off course of the topic.
Way off there.
But Yeah, it's
That's de-evolution right there. There's de-evolution on the left.
There's a panic attack of human beings staring at this robot next to them talking out of his ass.
Adam Wolford says Dune warned us about letting the machines take over. Remember, men with machines enslaved mankind. That is not what we want. There is no spice.
Yeah, I made a joke yesterday about like we don't really want to set ourselves up for a Butlerian jihad. A war on machines or creating machines to be too close to the likeness of man, because machines have their value, but there's certain things that need to be dedicated to human, or in the case to be more universal, organic life that has the ability to communicate and express.
Warrior Justice sends in $2 and says, also, hi, Brian, you Maple Leaf lover and culture.
Oh, right. Semifinals are approaching.
Late bloomers. DJ Ronnie G says, nothing. He's just been a member for 3 months. Thank you. And then Joshicus Doggy Woggy says, everything a computer does is prompted. I don't know about the whole language thing. I'm still not so convinced on that one. Space Monkey 0899 says, we have nothing to fear. Japan will make AI into love bots, which is most likely YouTube outcome. The most likely outcome, yeah. I for one welcome our waifu overlords. And on that note, Warrior of Justice says people are waiting so AI can come on them. Ooh. Well, that's the next step, I guess.
They're gonna put the AI into human robots that can walk and move. It's happening as soon as they can do it.
What's hysterical is I reminded of a joke from Married with Children where they go to like the nudie bar and then Al Bundy says, try and have Japan create something better than that. And it's like, well, 30 years later, they're trying to do that very exact thing.
I'll be damned. That's what he would say. Yeah. Aiken sends in $7.99 Australian, says, that being said, true artificial intelligence, then humans don't have true intelligence either. They build on what's gone before. Yeah. So that's where I like,
well, the thing is, they build on what they needed to survive and generated something from that. Computers have no desire to survive. They don't care. You can try to program it into them.
So says you, until we're all dead. Then I'll be like, you were wrong.
You'd be dead. You wouldn't be able to say anything.
In heaven or hell, or well, most likely we're all going to end up in hell, but like, you know what I mean? The afterlife. But that is all we have for super chats right now. But yeah, what culture? What?
No, it's just you said the afterlife, and now I have that Prince song in my head.
I knew it. Somebody was going to.
It's so great. Now that's not going to leave for a week. I'm going to be listening to Prince in my head for a week.
That's not a bad thing.
So just call up your shrink in Beverly Hills. You know the one. Doctor, everything will be all right.
I got nothing.
Now you just put Weezer in my head.
Let's go crazy.
Da, 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 da. Sorry.
Warrior of Justice says, AI, do not come on. Do not come on me. And Nick responds,
I'm gonna come
all over your AI. Steven's in the house. How you doing, buddy? He says, no one is asking the important question. When will Robert Downey Jr. and Anthony Michael Hall rejoin Saturday Night Live?
Become my old lady.
Saturday Night Live might never come back after this.
That'd be nice. Okay, so let's jump to that for a bit. What are the shows that are in jeopardy here? Because we already talked about Cobra Kai, Yellowstone, SNL shutting down. The night shows are shutting down.
Everything Kathleen Kennedy announced at Star Wars Celebration is shutting down. The Acolyte shutting down.
Oh, damn!
Such a shame.
Well,
dang. What are we gonna do? No. How will we prosper?
Matt Reeves' Batman 2 is shutting down.
Oh, good.
Season 3 of Star Trek Strange New Worlds is shutting down. If they're still shooting Star
Yeah,
Trek
because I heard a
Discovery,
rumor
that's
they
shutting
actually.
down.
Well, I heard they had already finished Discovery, but Section 31 was in some prelim shit.
They can't move on that
shit.
now.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah.
Oh no, let's go.
What a shame.
Yep.
Let's go crazy.
I don't know. For me, just ride this out as long as possible. I'm already gonna get the Equalizer this fall with Denzel. I'm good, man. And
did you say Cobra Kai or something?
Yeah, that's big delayed thus far.
Oh man.
Space Monkey 0899 says this is how the world ends, not with a bang, but with a whimper. In a dark holodeck filled with love bots. Indeed.
The love bots is a little old place where
Aiken says, haven't there been instances of Google AI needing to be reset after wanting to rip humanity, wanting to die? Yeah, I think so. I never heard for sure. I read something about that though. Mega J says, is there a possibility that studios might give into WGA's demands if the strike continues for too long? Script Doctor?
There's always a possibility. I think they're going to hold out as much as they can. I think both sides are, which is going to be unfortunate because this strike really should not be going longer than a couple of weeks. If it does, it's going to hurt a lot of people that you out there like to see. Like anyone that has a good show or movie or someone that you want to support, they're not working either. And again, the writers can only hold out so long. They'll still be getting various residuals on anything re-aired, but it's under the old contract, so there'll be a little bit of help for them. But nothing new is going to be able to happen. If you want that Star Trek Legacy show from Terry Matalas, there's no way that's going to happen now. So sorry.
But this is United States and Canada we're talking about. So if you watch Korean stuff, we're golden.
Yep. I mean, that's the other part too. Like a lot of the streamers that have contracts with those studios overseas that make content, they can license it and stream it without any repercussions.
Okay, so you are now a Scotsman Canadian from Texas that's actually from South Korea?
Yeah, well, into the South Korean entertainment.
Oh, okay, because you said we're golden. I'm like, when the fuck did you become trans, like racial or whatever?
Well, golden. I'm like that girl in the Bond movie. I'm painted gold.
Oh, is that what you do when you get with the sheep at night?
That's right.
Oh wow! Don't they end up like
you're one of Bond's ladies?
Anyway.
All that glitters
and
is
you're like
gold.
Bond with me.
No, South Korean stuff is not affected. That's good. I'm watching a few good South Korean shows. So
I see a great comment in the chat from David Bator, and I think that's a fantastic question. Is the Critical Drinker short movie going to go on hold?
Well, here's the thing. If he's
I think that's an indie project, isn't it?
If it's full indie, he'll be fine. If it ever gets associated with a WGA signatory, he will never be able to write a movie in Hollywood ever. But I don't think he really cares about that anyway. So.
John Thomas says, conspiracy theory, Disney announced so much Star Wars knowing the strike is coming, and that's the excuse it won't happen.
I was thinking
maybe.
I was thinking about that.
That's a good thought. Yeah. Wow. That's so petty to do.
Yeah.
What the that actually makes sense. Like, damn.
I wouldn't put it past some of them. And then Warrior Justice says, the love robot can change gender, hence a transformer. But chink.
Wow.
You're trans.
Oh yeah, that Transformer animated movie that they're working on, that's on hold.
It doesn't have Peter Cullen in it anyway. So who'd want to watch it?
Transformers. More
transitioning.
But yeah, the strike is the big news. Really, there isn't much else going on in entertainment news.
Well,
Really?
there can't be, because again, it's all prohibited. Like the only stuff that's coming out is the stuff that's 100% done. James Gunn can't write his Superman stuff or do anything
is
with his
good.
God and Monsters.
Well, see, that's the thing. It's done writing already, and they were in pre-production. So
nope, he can only do things as a hyphenate that do not require any writing, which means that he can do table reads, they can do budgeting, they can do casting. However, they have to use the existing scripts, the existing script that he has himself for the casting process. They cannot pull or write new sides for anything. And if a problem happens during production that requires writing, they cannot move on it.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say, because 2 weeks ago he said they're already done writing and into pre-production. So
yeah, again, but that doesn't mean he's going to never have to do a rewrite or polish or change a line or something.
Well, I'm not saying that, but
doesn't matter. Like he can get stuff going. That's fine. Like things that don't require rewrites, a lot of studios can get, some significant development and production and costumes and casting and stuff done. But once they actually start rolling, if something happens that requires a writer to correct an issue, they can't do it. The rules strictly prohibit it. They can't rewrite or re-edit to cut for time. Even in the editing suite, they can't do that. So
a layman's question on my part, but they're completely prohibited from hiring writers unaffiliated, or they just don't want to.
No, they are prohibited from hiring them unaffiliated as well. And if they attempt to it, you're supposed to report them to the WGA, because penalties are going to be levied against those parties. And then on top of that, if you end up working as a scab, you'll be barred from future WGA admission and work, and essentially be blacklisted, because again, a lot of the studios, they're signatories, which means that they can only hire WGA writers. So if you're a new writer and say you sell a spec script, in that process of that sale, they facilitate your membership to the WGA so that they don't violate the signatory. If they try to do that during the strike, they can't, and therefore that writer who has that opportunity, they can try and be a scab and sell it and take their money, but they'll probably never be able to work for that studio again, even if that script ended up making them $100 million to $1 billion at the box office, because the WGA will not allow them to work for the studio system. They'd have to go completely independent. And if there's any connections to any of the independent affiliates like A24 or Sony Classics or what have you, to that writer, the WGA is going to hold those studios accountable with possible legal action.
But I don't take any of that more than a grain of salt, Script. And it's not because I'm not taking you at your word, because I am, and I know you're 100% right. But there have been a lot of people that cross previous picket lines that are working in Hollywood under the WGA and other entities.
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. The only difference is that in those previous things, the severity was soft. This one, it's actually really, really strict. Like, it's the first time it's ever been this strict before. I've never seen it this strict before. And that means that they are not taking this lightly, which is of a concern, because it's basically saying like this is an all or nothing type of situation. In 2007, again, there's a lot of people that crossed that picket line and went to work, and they were told they're supposed to get repercussions, and none happened. And as a result, we got a domino effect of terrible writers stuck within the union that ended up getting some prominent jobs and starting the trend of the fraudulent creator. And it's hurt ever since. And I think as a result of that, that's why the WGA is buckling down and saying, basically telling everyone to report on their neighbors if they violate the strike conditions. Now, having said that, if a writer gets hired by a company that's not part of the struck company list, they're fine. So 100% independent company that's not a studio, modest budget, all that type of stuff, they can work for them and not violate their conditions or the terms of the WGA strike. But those are very, very few, far between jobs. Writers can still write screenplays for themselves with the intention of selling it after the strike is done, but they cannot do any negotiations, talk, pitches, any of those details during the time of the actual strike. So a lot of people hopefully will take the time they have when they're not on the picket line coming up with and writing new screenplays to pitch once the strike is over.
Makes sense.
Man, it's really weird to think that James Gunn is currently out there promoting his last Marvel movie for a studio he's taken shots at in magazines, but yet he's happy to be with DC and Warner Brothers, but yet he's on strike for a DC and Warner Brothers movie. He's promoting the Marvel movie this week, and yet he's supposed to be excited about Warner Brothers and DC. That's a really weird thought to process all that.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
He's out there on the red carpet promoting this movie, and then all of a sudden he's simultaneously at the same time part of basically a boycott.
Well, I mean, yeah, he's essentially part of a boycott, but you also have to remember the position that James Gunn holds. You will never find a justification for him to criticize negatively anything going on in the superhero film community because there's no gain for him to do so. There's no advantage for him to do so. So you're never going to get an honest opinion out of him. It's just not going to happen. Like, he's never going to say a bad thing about The Flash. He's never going to say a bad thing about the Snyder Cut films. He's never going to say a bad thing about Marvel. Even though he might have those opinions, you'll never hear from him because you will never justify an advantage for him to say so. And once everyone gets that in their head, they'll start to see and pick up on what is actually happening because it's his actions that speak louder than his words.
I believe you. No, I do. It's really odd considering that his final movie is the movie he's out there promoting right now. And yet he's supposed to be with this other studio that he seems to be all about, but yeah, he's on strike. And that hurts that studio, which is supposed to be his future.
Well, I mean, he's technically on strike against Disney too, because if Disney wants him to do any re-race before the actual premiere of Guardians of the Galaxies, which could possibly be the case because Disney is known for doing that, he has to strike against them as well. Yeah,
the movie comes out tomorrow, so
it does come out tomorrow. So, but
it's technically already been released, but yes. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I haven't seen anything that straight up says he is gonna stop working on Superman. I've seen some rumors to that effect, but I can't see them stopping pre-production and all that shit. Considering the movie doesn't even start shooting till next year. So
yeah, he's fine to a degree. I mean, he can start pre-production, he can start casting, he can get concept art made. He can start assembling the crew that he wants. There's a lot of stuff he can do as a hyphenate. It's just he can't do anything writing related at all. And
he was done with that 2 weeks ago, as far as that goes. So until that bridge
he has
to
to
crossed,
come and address a problem, he's fine. He's pretty much fine.
So I'm saying, so I don't buy into it too much until I actually see him say it. The Elusive says, my fear of AI is the end of Forbidden Planet when they realized the advanced race was wiped out by its own machine, which couldn't discern between taking thoughts and waking thoughts and dreams, the ID in their sleep.
I'm more concerned about the Forbin, the Colossus project scenario when the massive supercomputer takes over the world's defense systems.
Great one,
And then it determines the best way to save humanity is to destroy all the enemies of humanity, which is therefore humanity. Yeah,
that's right.
Logic loop.
None of these stories ever end in us living blissfully with machines. I'm just going to say this right now.
Nope.
Well, if anybody can figure out how to fuck machines, it's the Japanese. So
they already have.
They need to because older women are marrying white men.
Detailed Devil. Oh, go ahead, Cece.
I say all our stories are about machines killing us all, and we're the ones programming the machines with the information that they have to use to make those decisions. So
that's why we're lucky that a machine decided to off itself instead of everybody, CC. So I'm saying, what if it had another decision? It's to be like, I'm going to follow this. In every story, they tell me this is what I'm supposed to do.
Exactly, right? We need to start coming up with stories where the machines are in harmony with us instead now. And
well, the funny thing is that there's AI drones that some military contractors are trying to program so that they can shoot the target, not just where they are, but where they potentially will go. But they keep running into this logic error, which is that the AI has to reconcile, is programmed to kill as many targets as possible. So as a result, they have to make sure that every shot they take is a kill shot. So they actually have to go against the programming of not just shooting where the person is going to be, but where the person is, but where they're potentially going to be. So it puts them into a logic loop where they end up shutting down. Because there's always the possibility that if they're going after a moving target, where they could end up is only one of many variables, because they could do an they could go serpentine pattern, they could straight left or right, they could jump, they could dodge, whatever. And the programming is like the goal is to kill the target, so you have to shoot everywhere around it and where it is, but you have to kill the most targets, which means whatever ammunition you have has to be the exact amount of targets you kill. And so it's a great little thing.
Quantum probability would suggest he could be anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah, there's also that. So basically, the drone will never work. And I have to say, thank God for AI and there's the fact that they're stupid, because again, they are. They're only as smart as their program.
Very fast, but very stupid. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, Kirk would just
Great for basic calculations, but it's completely dumb. Again, like, have you ever tried to print from a printer and it says cannot print, and you're like, well, why? And it's like, I don't know. Like, you expect this to take over the world? Please.
It's you programmed me. It's your fault.
Then there's the other part too, which is memory capacity. An AI is programmed to absorb as much information as possible, which means that it's going to have a capacity limit of storage space. And once it has a capacity limit of storage space, it will shut down. And even though they try to create those like diamond hard drive space with like lasers and stuff, they're so far away from actually being reliable that you're not going to see that happen in our lifetime or even the next 3 lifetimes, most likely.
It's true. The capacity to train music-related AIs is based on the RAM in your computer. If you got 32 gigs of RAM, that's the maximum amount of data that you can train. If you got 64, 128.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it looks like Brian has to leave us here, so
I gotta go eat. I'm old.
It's 5 p.m.
There's set times for this kind of thing.
Yeah, only old people eat.
Yeah.
He's got to get to the early bird buffet.
Indeed. So,
dude, $4 for all you can eat. Jeez, that's a deal, man.
I wish. Go check out this guy below me. Toxic Tuesday tonight.
Yeah.
If I don't get there soon enough to eat all the shrimp on me.
Do you believe in Jesus?
Do you believe it?
All of us have channels there.
So, good night, everybody. See you all soon.
Brian.
Yeah.
You see,
but he'll be on that guy's channel later.
I'll be on Toxic Tuesday.
All right.
We're talking about Death Wish 2.
Yeah. So, Nick, I sent you a fine meme, so check that out.
Oh, I can't wait to see it.
All right. I'll see you all guys later. Have a good night.
All right. Take care.
Soon 70s.
And next question here from Detailed Devil Art 2 Section 4 asks, is animation writing WGA or not affected by strike? Well, if it's WGA, yes.
All writing is affected by the strike, ostensibly. If there's any writing that is connected to any studio is affected by the strike. Only something that is 100% independent, like self-finance things, you're fine. But if you're getting money from a studio,
if you're asking if it's going to affect your anime in Japan, no.
Yeah, like if it's an animation studio outsourced in Japan that licenses the content to the United States or the West in general, you'll be fine.
Yeah, I think that's what they're asking about. But like if it's an American produced animated show, yes.
Yeah, like the J.J. Abrams Batman cartoon, that's not coming out anytime soon.
The only animated shows I'm worried about are South Park and Beavis and Butthead, basically.
Yeah. Any of the stuff that is not complete for their air date is on delayed. There's a number of animation shows where they're supposed to have started recording last week and hasn't happened. I have one friend who's supposed to be doing one, and that's in there. And I have another friend who's talking about like they don't know what's happening. They have to do rewrites on a script, but they haven't gotten all the notes back from the studio to do so, and they didn't get it in time. So now they're on strike, and they have to wait it out. Mm-hmm.
There you go. So yeah, as long as it's not American affiliated or with the WGA and all that business, then yeah, it's not going to have a problem. But Jack White says, upside, if the strike goes on for a while, it will give peeps on this panel a chance to catch up on their shows they're behind on or series they have been recommended, like Full Metal I knew that was coming.
Wow.
Like Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Yeah, we'll see, Jack.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I mean, any type of new information that comes with regards to negotiations of this strike is going to be newsworthy and will have to be covered.
That's what I was going to say. We're going to be busy with a lot. I got to go watch Script Doctor's video from last night yet, just to get kind of more up to speed with this stuff.
Yeah, I go
we've
through
got
all of their demands in great detail, and then we go through the generals of the strike rules.
And then tomorrow morning, I don't know if Script is going to be there. Hopefully he can, but we also have Andrew from Legal Mindset coming on as well. So we'll have some overlap there with everything. And then he's going to talk about the whole Disney business too. So
yeah, because I don't think he has. I don't know how much he has in entertainment law, but he'd still be a very good voice to have over there.
Oh, he has a lot. In fact, I think
on entertainment law or just.
Oh well, I guess it depends on how you look at it. You'd have to ask him, but like.
Yeah.
Because I think he actually is very familiar with Disney's.
Well, that's not districting and business law, and that's corporate law.
Yeah, that's true.
So corporate law and entertainment law are not the same fields, but they do have some things that overlap.
Maybe. You'll have to ask him specifically, but yeah. Then we got Camelbot Killer who says, Script Doc, when will the studio's WGA negotiate? What's the % they will agree? Settle? How long could this strike last? What's your thoughts to the outcome? Well, that's a very loaded question, so I guess take it one at a time there.
They'll have scheduled dates for when they go back to the negotiating table. I don't know when those are. Percentage that they'll agree, couldn't tell you. I'm not in the room, so I don't know what's going on there. Likelihood of settling, no one's going to win when this settles, most likely, because they've no strike has ever settled with a win for either side. It's been just an acquiescence to a couple of things. Not always great, but slightly better than what they were before to some degrees, and slightly worse than others. Yeah, it all depends on what they manage to get and what their real goals are. And unfortunately, because I'm no longer an associate with the WGA at this time, that was about to change, but it's not gonna anytime soon. I don't know the legit demands that they want that are hidden underneath the stuff that they've written that they're trying to push so that they can win the stuff that they want. Like, as I mentioned before, they want a 52-week work year on a television show. We know that's impossible. Ideally, they just want to make sure that they're getting paid for all the work that they're doing within the schedule or outside the schedule if it happens to go over. That is not unreasonable. That's a fair thing. They're trying to create a number that could possibly achieve that and make sure that everyone who is technically forced to live in California will be able to pay their mortgage, their rent, their bills, because some of the minimums there are around like $7,000 a week, which is really good if you live anywhere else in North America, except for California and New York, and some parts of Atlanta now, because they're booming and getting more expensive with the film industry having moved some aspects of them out there. So, yeah, it's not ideal.
Yeah, and you also got to remember, the longer it drags out, the worse it is for both parties. So they're both going to want.
The worse it is for good writers, the worse it is for good producers, and the best it can be for those that shouldn't have been in the industry in the first place, because they'll have to find other jobs.
Yeah, what I was going to say is basically that the best case scenario for both parties is that they work it out quickly, and the writers do actually get something out of this, and they're not just pushing something off till the next time.
Which
that's what it felt like the last time. Yeah, exactly. Because that's what it felt like the last time. It was like, okay, we're gonna buckle on this, buckle on that. They got a few things, but then it was like it drug out for so long, and it was just, anyway.
But the subsequent negotiations after 2007 went far better, because they started figuring.
Yeah, I was actually referring to the 2006-07 ones. Yeah.
Yeah, like the only thing I can hope for, and I did mention this on last night on my channel, is that if the studios go full in on the network model for their streaming services, where numbers can actually be properly recorded and you can see revenue value, not just from subscribers, but from people that buy commercial ads, then you're going to be able to have a lot more of an honest negotiation and a lot more value for the good writers to be working and generating that income and basically having some proper leverage at the negotiating table than what the studios have been doing recently, but by trying to hide those numbers, and also by the fact that they're only getting subscriber revenue and any licensing revenue, as opposed to what they get with network, which is far greater than what it is on streaming. However, so many customers are going over to streaming that you're averaging on network television anywhere between 2 and 8 million viewers for a given show. And that's a huge discrepancy when the possibility is that you're probably going to get maybe double that on a successful streaming show, or at least you're getting at least those numbers on streaming across a multitude of shows. Not necessarily completing the shows, but just, technically good old fashioned channel surfing for whatever the streaming counterpart would be for that.
All right. Then we got, we got that one. John Thomas says, Babylon 5, the Ankara developed a biological machine to kill non-Ankara it couldn't differentiate between genetic anomalies and aliens, and it turned on its creators.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the Babylon 5 show.
Wow.
Sadly, J. Michael Krasinski's reboot or reimagining, that's also on hold now.
Oh, thank God that won't happen. No, please don't let it happen. Oh, good. More good news. Not that it was going to happen anyway. But...
I had my reservations on that too.
Yeah.
And then we've got Jack White. Why is this still up here? C-Man says will the strike impact video game writers?
Only for ones that the video games are being produced by a studio. So like Warner Brothers or Sony or Disney or anything, if they have an affiliation with it. So if, for instance, like EA has a contract with Disney for their Star Wars thing, if they need to write additional content for their Jedi Knight Survivor game, they can't do that right now.
So the actual video game writers don't actually fall under the WGA, basically, is what you're saying.
No, they do.
Oh, they do. Okay.
They can't. Again, if it's a studio, if it's a film studio associated property, it cannot do it. If it's like from Rockstar Games, it's an independent IT that doesn't have a studio connection or to it at all, they're fine. Because it's not a struck company. Only the struck companies. So if it's all the big major studios, Apple, YouTube, Netflix, Amazon, Universal, Sony, Disney, Warner Brothers, any other subsidiaries, Lionsgate, A24, Blumhouse, any of those things, any of those companies are considered struck companies, and you cannot work for them if you're a WGA member or a screenwriter that is on the cusp of gaining WGA membership.
So the Harry Potter game, for example, or
exactly, the Harry Potter game can't do it. The
sequel.
Harry Potter reboot show can't go into any further development. Right now.
And Camelbot Killer says part 2. Thank you for your thoughts and views. Well, thank you, Camelbot Killer.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. And with that, we are caught up on the super chats. Was there any other questions on the panel? Go ahead, Cole.
No, not a question, but I do have to step out. I've got to start making dinner for the missus. So
good for you.
Sorry.
Go make her a sandwich.
No.
Well, we know who the bitch is now.
I love to cook, and I only cook occasionally. Calm down. Everybody chill. Anyway, I had a good time.
He always tries to tell me how to cook.
You suck at cooking.
How do you know?
Because I think you
just
try to
eat like a 12-year-old.
Yes. And I'm sure right now somewhere near you is a Rolo. You could literally reach over and eat.
Oh, what the fuck are you talking about?
Okay, well, what are you chewing on now? Like a red vine? That's what I thought. All right, I'm out of here.
It's a Starburst twist.
You eat like a 12-year-old.
Starburst twist, dude. I didn't know they have twists. I want Starburst twist.
I'm sick.
So does Nick.
I'm sick and Polly on you. He put me through my paces today. So
actually, Jack White's super chat actually made me think of a question. How would this affect the Super Mario Brothers movie and its future installments like Zelda and so on?
They will be on hold.
Okay, so even though it's Nintendo property, that entire extended universe is now on hold.
It's now on hold. Now, if Nintendo wants to hire any North American writers to work on their products, they are prohibited, so they have to go back to their Japanese counterparts to work on those developments and things. Because again, they're outside of the union. They're on a different partition of a company. So yeah, it's basically in the West. Like even some of the gaming studios that have contracts with film studios for games, those ones are prohibited. But the ones that they work on that are not studio related to film and television, those are fine. So I think Grand Theft Auto doesn't have anything in development with a major studio, so they could write another Grand Theft Auto video game if they so choose. But you'll never see another Batman video game or Superman or Iron Man or Flash. Any of those games, you're not going to see being able to be worked on the screenwriting side of things.
Unless they're a lot farther along into production than we thought, which we have been told they're a lot farther along with the movie. We just don't know where they're at.
Video games can be tricky with writing, though. Like the writing goes on right up, like a lot further along. I mean, I'm not saying that there aren't late.
It goes right up to the last rendering, essentially.
Yeah.
What is Tom eating?
Nothing. What do you want, Mike?
I'm here because I was
privately.
I turned on the show. I'm like, oh, they're wrapping up, and then I heard something that I cannot believe my ears, which is that you're probably eating something you shouldn't be eating. I
thought you just came in because culture left.
That was my next line.
hey, Mike. He was not eating a pizza with M&Ms on it. Don't worry about it.
I was waiting for the smell of.
It was Reese's Pieces.
I was waiting for the scent of hair relaxer to leave the room before I came in.
Jack White on that note said, "Did you guys see that Nintendo released a new teaser for the new Zelda game? A new series recommendation for you, Lot Hell's Paradise." I did hear about the trailer. I haven't checked it out yet because I'm not a gaming person. But anybody here on the panel a gaming person, and did they check it out? Or
yeah, I've been checking out Tears of the Kingdom because I don't care about spoilers, and I won't spoil on the panel. But it looks like it's going to be good. I'd say it's everything the first game wasn't, but just a lot bigger and a lot more. So hey, sure,
All right. Well, thank you, CC. Camobot Killer then sends in another 2. Thank you so much. It says, "Script Doctor, my thoughts and prayers to the writers in the world." There you go.
Well, technically, it's just in North America. Really.
Yeah.
They're the only ones that are in trouble. Like even in Canada, the WGC, as far as I know, they're not on strike, but they are standing in solidarity with them. However, much like with the WGA writers, we also are prohibited from working for those signatories in the United States at this time. However, we can work for WGC signatories here in Canada. I'm pretty sure some of the WGA writers can also do the same thing in Canada because, again, Canada doesn't really have a studio system. As far as I know, none of the studios listed are Canadian companies that are struck there. So some writers could work for like CTV, CBC, Bell Media, Rogers Media, various Canadian companies here. I know they don't want to, but they could.
Then Adam Wolford says, Dark Tower series by Mike Flanagan is on hold as well. There you go. There's another one. Dearest says, "How are indie filmmakers affected? Can British or non-U.S. studios hire Americans?" This is a touchy question. The indie filmmakers can still make movies.
Yep, as long as they're not associated with a struck company. Fun fact: not many British studios hire American or Canadian writers.
Yeah, I was going to say if they're in the union. Yeah, I was going to say if they're in the union, it'll be seen as like basically being a scab in some ways.
To a degree, well, I mean, not necessarily because there's none of the struck companies listed are companies in the UK, so you can.
Well, I meant more so on the indie side of things, but yeah.
Well, on the indie side of things, again, they're not struck companies, so they're okay. One of the things that it was heavily reinforced in the rules is that if you're unsure, if you have a job opportunity that's not of a struck company and you're unsure, contact your WGA rep and they will examine the case and give you a decision, and they will make sure that if the decision is a go, that everybody is well aware of it and they're not going to mistreat you as a result. Because again, the idea is that they're trying to fight for proper compensation in line with the cost of living in California. And really, I mean, if Gavin Newsom knew how to run,
so you're saying it's California's fault?
It is actually. It's the administration in California that screwed this up. Because again, if you can't live off of $7,000 a week as a working writer in California, clearly there's something wrong with the economy and the expenses in that state.
I've heard the homeless got it pretty good.
That's a lot of money, yeah.
Fuck, I can live off. That's like 2-3 months worth of living for me, man. Jesus,
that's more than I bill out in a week.
Yeah,
2 weeks. Wait, hold on. No,
and that's a relative average based on negotiating standards. Like that's. And listen,
I could live on 2 months for that easy.
What I charge WGA rates with regards to when I have to go in on emergency to rewrite a page or something. That's around like $2,500, give or take, plus a little per diem bonus. That's really good, but those jobs are so few far between that you can't really live off of that very well for very long. Same thing with certain staff writer shows. If you're on a television show and say you're doing a streaming service where it's an intense writing where you're only getting 6 weeks of work, that's still pretty good at $7,000 a week, but you might not get another job after that for many months or maybe even years as a result, which means that you're living off of that bulk amount of pay until your next gig, and that's really difficult. And the strange aspect too is that even though the studios are so eager to have content to occupy their streaming services, they're still very frugal with what they want to invest in, and they're only going to go in with so many shows, and they're only going to throw good money at good product or stuff that they think is a good product, which comes down to another part of the source of the problem. Yes, there are bad writers. In fact, the majority of Hollywood writers are terrible. The problem is that you've had studio executives hiring these bad writers because they fall under the DEI stuff, and they've put them in charge of various IPs that have not performed well. And so as a result, you get this really bad stigma of writers in the industry because it's not the best that are working, it's the worst. And so you're happy that they're on strike. and I don't blame you for that, because we wouldn't be in this situation had studio execs picked the writers that were going to be best for the job, that could perform the way that they needed and make them the money they want, so that they wouldn't be so concerned, even though it's a faux concern, with paying them a fair wage compared to the living expenses in the state. And the best way you could solve this is that if California got their act together and it didn't cost someone, $12,000 a month to rent a studio apartment above a grocery store, maybe they wouldn't have to worry about requesting higher pay to live in the state. Maybe they would just be like, well, we want to make sure our residuals are on time and our proper compensation and are something that we can live off of in the event that we don't find work for up to a year or so. Instead, that's not the case.
I think that $7,000 a week must include a budget for cocaine, because there's no way California costs that much. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Vancouver's at about 3,000 a month right now. I would imagine California's got to be more than that.
Well, you're talking about like Burbank, Century City, North, South, West Hollywood, East Hollywood, Beverly Hills. They're all very, very expensive places.
Yeah, but I lived in Westwood. I mean, it's not $7,000 a week.
No, I no, exactly. You can do quite well on $7,000 a week in Westwood.
Yeah.
Detailed Devil brings up that big studios use Animation Guild writers paid less.
There are some of that, like if you're talking about like dubbing or translations, that can be done by WGA, but there's also another guild for it as well that I think works with a foreign guild to get that done.
Holy crap! Jory sent in $100. Thank you so much.
Woo!
Wow.
Wowzer.
Do I need to plug my camera in and take my shirt off?
Yes.
Yes.
Be right back.
The writing has been terrible in Hollywood, says Jory. But it's not. What happened here? We lost somebody else.
No,
Mike brought 6 to the show.
Showed up and then she left.
Oh, okay. She was coming in to see him take his shirt off.
To say yes.
Oh.
Now you have.
Okay. So Jory says the writing has been terrible in Hollywood, but it's not writers' fault. They write what they're allowed to write. It's the producer and studio's woke cult problem. That's a big part of it, yeah. As far as
I mean, it's the one thing that I talked about last year with regards to like She-Hulk and why are these writers from Rick and Morty being brought in and there's green and wet behind the ears, is because they're giving a great opportunity, and no way are they going to tell their boss that hired them no, because they need this job. Whereas a very experienced writer or an experienced director, what have you, would be like, if this executive gives them a bad idea, they'll either fight against it or they're talented enough and experienced enough to make that idea work so it doesn't actually damage the show. But,
or your Alex Kurtzman.
Yeah, or your Alex Kurtzman or Jessica Gao or Andrew Waldron, is it? No, or Michael Waldron. And that Stephen Loveless guy or Dave Callahan or any of these guys that suck at their job.
There you go.
Where's that dance, Mikey?
Yeah, we're waiting.
Hey, I was kidding. I'm not going to do that. Come on.
No, you weren't.
No, I'm not going to do that right now. I don't even
have. We want some Mexican man meat here.
I'd have to get liquored up, and I'm all out of liquor.
You're disappointed.
Oh, you're going to liquor up. Yeah, you're disappointing Six.
Come
Six said
on.
that you need to
And
do
Jory.
$100.
Jory and Six are going to be very disappointed.
Okay, you know what? How
Okay,
about
now you
Thursday?
really have
Holy
to.
crap.
You have to do it
you
now.
better, Mike.
What?
Jory sends in another $100. My gosh. I wow. Thank you so much.
I think, can we officially name Jory as the official executive producer of the show?
I think so. He's the producer, executive shit.
Producer.
Jory says Hollywood has the best writers on earth. The people telling them what they can write is the problem.
I mean, it does have some of the best writers on earth. That's for sure. There are other places, of course, in other countries where there's also some fantastic writers as well.
I mean, I think he has a point that, like, okay, 50 years ago, you could argue that some of the best writers on earth are still writing novels and shit.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I think he's got a point that, yeah, majority of the best writers around are probably working in the industry somewhere. Because that's
I'll put it to you this way. And I brought up the story a couple of times, so I'll do it again because it's absolutely brilliant. So Matt Nix, if you're fans of Burn Notice, he did that show. He was hired by Disney to do Turner and Hooch, and he was given parameters, woke parameters, that you could obviously tell, did not agree with. But he is such a talented writer, even though he's very safe in his executions, that he ended up using those woke elements and turning them on its head so that he could get the show he actually wanted. And Disney got hoodwinked by that to the point where they were so upset they canceled the show after its first season aired, which it did actually fairly decent on Disney Plus to a degree, considering the fact that they almost didn't advertise it. But they ended up doing it. He was given a mandate where the main character had to have a partner that was female and of color and be a badass. And Matt Nix said, hey, that's a good idea. How about we also make her pregnant too? And they said, we love it. So he makes her pregnant, but not just any type of pregnant, 7 to 8 months pregnant. And then there's a running gag in the episodes she's in where she's in the field where everybody is telling her, you're 7 to 8 months pregnant, go on goddamn maternity leave. And what happens after the third episode of the series? She goes on maternity leave because it's the logical thing to do. And so another character, a weird partner character, a man, is brought in, and now Matt Nix has the show he wants of the two male lead characters solving crimes, with the female lead character working at the desk or working remotely, helping in, still being a very supportive and essential part of the show. A great writer can do that type of stuff. Bad writers didn't. A counterexample, take a look at Moon Knight. Bad writer didn't know how to make that work. And as a result, you got a show that most people forgot existed.
Yeah, and actually this was a point of discussion earlier, Mr. H's, and I had said that basically, because Mr. H was because there was a question brought up in the chat, is it a result of the writers themselves being woke, or is Hollywood forcing them to be woke? I said,
yeah,
that's what I said. I said it's kind of it's one half of the other, because you have, now it's like a snake eating its own tail, basically. You had people who wanted to work and stay in the industry, and that's where the industry was headed with. That's where the extra funding and all that kind of stuff was going. So they were going along with that mind think, even though I and many others know people that are against this shit, but they have to basically deal with it because otherwise they don't eat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is 100% the studio's fault for taking the money from these public or these private interest groups and other places like BlackRock and other what's the other one?
Vanguard.
Thank you. And yeah, that's a big problem.
Again, it all comes down to, like with any job, you do the bidding of the person that's paying the bills, that's paying you. And if the studio is paying you a lot of money and they're saying, we want you to hit these points, the best writers can make it work, and the worst writers just do the bare minimum. And as a result, we've had a very what's the best word I want to look for? Divisive, I guess would be the best word. Divisive set of film and television over the past nearly 6 years.
Yeah, surrounded by a bun of bullshit, basically, is
Pretty
really
much
what I feel like. But yes, thank you again, Jory, for the very generous super chats.
Yes, indeed.
It looks like, yeah, you're agreeing with exactly what I was saying. Is, yeah, a lot of these folks have no choice. They gotta pay the bills. Klobby, looks like you got something to say.
Does it?
You unmuted, so I thought maybe you had something to say.
Bobby's very happy. A lot of these shows he's not looking forward to are going to be delayed.
Oh, I'm not that mean
I don't
spirited.
blame you for that.
And anything that keeps anything like from the filth getting made, or yeah, I guess I am.
Well, what's
Now that
disappointing?
you mention it.
What's disappointing to me is that like I watch the True Lies show by Matt Nix because I like his writing. It's safe, it feels dated, but I mean it's still wholesome fun, and it cleverly mocks the woke elements that are in there. It really does. He's really like basically saying F you to the people that have this ideology. And the True Lies show, it's not doing great on CBS. I think it's above 2.5 million in viewership per episode, which the CW would kill to have those ratings. But it's still not
normally
great.
That's cancel ground for most shows on a network, though.
Exactly. But the thing is, this is also a very cheap show to produce, so it's actually kind of making, it's still able to make a profit. But now this show is most likely going to be canceled and not picked up for a second season, because what's going to end up happening is how many writers are going to find themselves with different opportunities once the strike is over. Just like in 2007, some writers weren't called back, and other writers that were on another show that had an opportunity to run a show of their own were called in right away and left some of those other shows, and thus the series suffered with their absence. So that is the double-edged sword of the strike.
I should make clear
a favorite show out there, the number 2 team might end up leaving to go do their own pilot and get their own show greenlit.
Right.
And your favorite show suffers.
Now I should make clear that I'm yes, anything that keeps the filth getting made, I'm laughing at that unapologetically. But for anybody else, all those other shows, all those people losing their jobs or getting, I'm not laughing at any of that. I think it's a shame. It's a terrible. Just the ones that make the horrible stuff that trash the things that we love, like anything to do with bad reboot or Suckered Outhouse. Those people, of course, but.
Script, I've taken a lot from what you said today that you think that this strike is going to clear out the rubble at the bottom of the pile.
Well, it can. It all comes down to basically, everyone's going to be on strike. And then when things start back up again, phone calls are going to be made. And the people that are valuable are going to be the first ones called. And the people that aren't are going to be waiting by their phones. That's usually how it works. I am really hoping for some phone calls when the strike is over.
Well, I'm already committed to be your chauffeur. So we have a plan. Script's flying into the U.S. I'm picking him up. We're driving straight to Warner Brothers and straight to Paramount. We're going to fix some shit. And I'm in charge of being his driver, tax services, going to the bank to make his big fat deposits, running security and tactical protection, and feeding him. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is, the negotiation was kind of unavoidable. Again, it's every 3 years. So someone in the chat just mentioned, a strike during a recession. Yeah, well, it can't be helped. I mean, it's not like they wanted to. It's not like they wanted to say, hey, let's delay negotiations until this recession is gone, because who knows how long that's going to last. They can't do it. They're on a schedule. The mandate is that every 3 years they go back to the bargaining table to negotiate new wages based on the current state of the economy. And I mean, for a while it was pretty good in the 90s and up until the mid 2000s, until the internet kind of allowed for the facilitation of broadcast television be played on websites. And now we have the streaming wars that are basically coming to an end.
There you go. Yeah. And then we've got Shinatsky who says, "Dance, Mikey, dance."
Not right now. I'll do it after. I'll do it on the Thursday night late show after we see Guardians of the Galaxy, and we're going to cover it still, right, Tom?
Yeah. Holy crap! Holy Jory blowing it up with another 100. My gosh, man!
Wow.
Woo. Says there's several stories on hold right now that could make studios $1 billion. Why? They don't have enough diversity quota? Does making money matter now? No diversity quota, so we all suffer. Well,
various degrees, yeah. There's also, again, the principal economy in Hollywood is reputation. So if you are an executive producer that puts together a production where it is 99% white people and straight white people, even if that movie is a success, you're going to get the Whisper Network criticizing you for not being diverse and not being inclusive and whatnot. And then eventually that Whisper Network's going to leak to the trades, and the trades are going to give permission for them to speak out loud about it. And then it's going to cause a whole spiral. And then even though you made $1 billion movie and had nothing to do with the fact that they were all straight white people, but the fact that you just got the best of the best in the business and they just happen to be available and of that ethnicity at the time, it's going to be completely irrelevant. And it's going to hurt relationships. And then, of course, that person is either going to persevere by sticking it out and maybe not working for a couple of years until they get an opportunity to do another big hit, or they're going to leave altogether. And it's basically high school to the nth degree. And every entertainment industry falls under this potential problem, even YouTube. Once you get big enough, you become the mainstream, and you are subjected to all the same follies that could happen to the mainstream to yourself, just even if you are just an independent creator on YouTube.
Yeah. And then he says, adds to it, my dad was a grip, and my dad is unemployed because of this. I was a child working on the set with my dad of Red Dragon with Anthony Hopkins. Now hardworking grips, gaffers, set directors are not working. Yeah, I mean, I kind of made this point earlier on Mr. H's stream is, I mean, a part of this, and this is nothing against you, Scripps, so please don't take it personally, but again, these are people, like, when it comes to like sports, entertainment, people going on strike, 9.9 times out of 10, I think it's a big bunch of bullshit, because you got people who are doing what most people dream of or could wish they could do, and you're complaining about it. But with a but, writers are, along with some other groups of folks, people who are overlooked the most. But yeah, the people who suffer the most when it comes to these things are never the big movie stars, are never the big name people that we know, although they tend to support it the most. The people who lose out the most are the people that work the hardest in the industry, unfortunately, and don't make the most.
That's your crew, that's your Teamsters, that's your IATSEs. Now, like, the majority of them know in the crew are actually in support of the strike. I mean, they're not in support of the strike for the reasons that are being made, but they're in support of the fact that they have to strike, because they do know that if there's not any pushback to the refusal of acquiescence to some of the demands, that they themselves, their departments, are going to be exploited come their negotiating terms. And that's basically it. There's always going to be one or the other that's going to be taken advantage of if one or the other does not stand up for at least what they want. Again, out of the list of demands that are posted, I only have an issue with 2 of them, and I've addressed what those 2 are. Everything else seems perfectly reasonable, at least as a starting point for negotiations, is something that could actually be better intended for writers themselves. But I also really think that it would be nice if there was a grassroots lobby to change the body politic in California so that the economy can be a bit more stable, so that when it comes to renegotiating rates, something like $7,000 a week as a base rate is considered comfortable and stable for, say, a few negotiating cycles, to the point where maybe when they want a percentage increase, and it's a modest one, it doesn't seem like a big, difficult tug of war with the alliance of motion pictures and television producers. I think that has something to do with it as well. And that also comes down to, getting involved in local politics, voting for your mayor and comptroller and stuff, and then voting for your governor and whatnot, and making sure and holding them account. And if you have the option, calling for referendums and, recalls. I mean, California has done it before. We got Governor Schwarzenegger because of a recall. Like, there's nothing preventing them from doing it again other than their own heads up their butts.
Tried and failed this past year, but
I remember, yeah, and I actually I listened to a lot of the other candidates. Larry Elder was not a bad guy. He seemed to have a lot of coherent approach to things. And Dr. Coffin Nails, you're absolutely right. $7,000 a week, I should be so lucky. Heck, I would be grateful for that. Even if I was living in California, I would find a crappy neighborhood where I could afford it and put some money away to buy a home if I got
lucky. And I get it. A lot of times writers aren't working in a situation where they have a weekly job, right? That's another thing. Some people do need to understand, and I get that. Like, sometimes you're selling a script up front, like you get X amount for it, and you don't see another dime unless you do a rewrite or something like that, negotiate for it unless the rewrites are in that amount. And it's one of those things where you get that and that's it. You don't know what you're going to make again until you sell another script or you actually get a writing gig somewhere.
Or that movie goes into production and is released, and
Yeah.
you get your residual points, and even then, you're not looking at anything more than like 1 or 2 points off the gross.
Right. And those are things you can't guarantee when you know they're going to come and all that kind of stuff too. That's the problem. So I'm sure that's
exactly.
Because like you said, you don't necessarily know where your next job is coming from. So
exactly, that could be your one job in 2 years, which means you got a budget for that 2 years. And you know, some people have actually said, like, yeah, I sold a script for $250,000, and guess what? If everything goes terribly, I am making the same amount as I would if I were managing a fast food restaurant. And if it goes great, I am able to buy a home in cash and not have to worry about a mortgage.
Right. Thank you again, Jory. Very, very generous of you tonight. John Thomas says, I know Script Doctor doesn't show his face, but hope he uses a voice disguise thingy. One of the chat spies hears him in person. He's done. I don't know about that.
No, they don't know me. Like, I know some people that do watch this show. They have no idea. It's literally the Clark Kent effect being proven correct.
I mean, I know who you are, and then when we saw each other in real life, I forgot to call you Doogie Howser. I'm
Wait,
like,
you
oh,
saw
shoot,
each other in real life?
I keep wanting to call him Script Doctor, and I forget it's Mr. Hauser.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why wasn't I told about this?
Okay, so you remember when that one scene, like way back in the thing, and Doogie goes into that one room, and it's really a closet? Well, that was a time portal, and he emerged the other end of it on Midnight Sage After Dark as Script Doctor. Yep. That's what happened.
I do write on a Microsoft Word Perfect word processor on a Commodore 64.
Yep. And what many people don't know is the reason he sounds like he's 14 is because he is. Yep.
That is right. I am not born in the 20th century.
Nope. The true story is he's from the future, but I'm not going to tell anybody Script. That was the secret you told me. Shh. We're not live, are we?
No, we're good. Nobody knows that I'm Neil Patrick Harris and really straight.
Tom, don't fire me. I'm just having fun.
I'm thinking about it.
No.
Steven says he's not leaving until he figures out who you are, Script. Well, maybe someday we'll
be here
get
a
that
long
revelation.
time.
Yeah, I know.
And then we've got the last millennial that says, Script, how many of these writers go on strike? Is it around 1K, 5K, or 10K? What's your guess?
It is 5,553 minimum.
Wow.
Yep.
Holy shit.
That's right.
Sorry, I was reading the story that Six gave us here in the background. Said they put their announcement party on hold because of this. So yeah, we'll have to see how that rolls with all this. But I do know we have a show coming up here with Nick, and I think you have to step out here soon.
We do. Yes, I do gotta step out. But yes, in a half hour, Toxic Tuesday, of course, and it'll be Death Wish 2. So please come hang out for that. That'll be in a half hour. So yeah, I hope to see as many of you as possible for that. And thanks for having me, Tom and Script. Always awesome to hear your thoughts and insights on all this. It's always worth hanging on just to hear what you got to say. I appreciate the answers on the questions I had, because I want to understand this stuff. So I appreciate that, and always good to hang out with. Oh, dude, I know, but the thing is, you're making it make sense. You're making it make sense for me, so I appreciate that. And good to see CC Karaoke, Mike, Clubby, and of course to our chat and our mods. Thank you guys, and I'll see you all shortly. Hopefully, I'll see some of you in a half hour.
Yeah.
Sorry, my whole PC just froze up. So yeah, we're gonna wrap this up here. CC, what do you got coming up?
It's as always Friday night karaoke after the late show with Mexican Iron Man. And, catch us one place or the other.
All right. Script. Besides your recent video, anything else to plug?
Well, I've got another video I'm working on that I did a discussion with Paul Chato and RMB on some cool tech talk and stuff. I'm trying to get that finished to release this weekend. I do have a couple of jobs I have to finish up that have already been paid for, so they don't violate the WGA strike. But then after that, I'm probably going to be doing some streaming of Conan and things, and whatnot. And yeah, that's just what it. Just feel free to join my Patreon right now. It's going to help a lot more for me. I'm sorry to proposition people like that, but it really will.
You got to do what you got to do, man.
Yeah. Which is it's not ideal, but it is what it is. It was supposed to go to another project that I want to announce with a team, but we had a discussion this morning. It's like, well, do what you can to stay afloat so that when we do decide to announce it, you'll be able to participate. So that's what's going on right now. But outside of that, I am otherwise going to be okay, and I'll be happy to entertain you all on Midnight's Edge After Dark, and any other stream that wishes to have me on. I'll be happy to participate.
All right. Let's see here, Klobby, what do you got coming up?
Well, I usually on Wednesday nights, mostly Loki, we have the roundtable at 7 p.m. Central. So I don't know if we're having that. I never know for sure till the night of the thing, but I do my show on Wednesday nights, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. My wildcard Wednesday nights, and then my Thursday nights, of course, with Raquel and Mark, the Clubby's Clubhouse, and of course Saturday night Star Trek. It's always 9 p.m. Central, reviewing all of real Star Trek 66 through 05. 4 more episodes of Deep Space Nine this weekend. So,
awesome. All right.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Mikey, the best YouTuber in the world. What you got coming up?
10 o'clock tonight. Unfortunately, it's at the same time as Nick's show, but it's on Snowdub's channel. I am going to talk about me having just seen the first 4 Rambo movies in the last 4 days.
Oh, wow.
Of course, it has to overlap with Toxic Tuesday.
Hey, I didn't book it. He booked me. It's not my fault. I'm not a YouTuber. I don't control anything. I just show up.
I didn't book you. You booked me.
I never want to be. I even less want to be a YouTuber now, because now I'm at the point where, like, and people that I follow loyally, like, they collide with each other all the time. Like, it
happens.
It's happening all the time.
I'm just mad I can't be there, or at least I might have to show up a little later or something, because I'll start off at one, maybe jump over the other. We'll see.
Yeah, you can grill me. I'll send you the link. Grill me on, like, did I see this? Did I notice that? Did I appreciate this? Did I appreciate that?
6.
Okay, you know what? 4 movies in 4 days. Her husband must be home with the flu. Har, hardy, har.
So what did you think overall,
though? 3 was forgettable. I had a hard time getting through 3 just because of the whole Taliban thing. The second one was visually really impressive. 1 was amazing. 4 was unbelievable. So I'm going to rank them 4, 1, 3. No, 4, 1, 2, 3 in that order. And I know there's more. There's
one more.
One more after that? Okay, well.
Yeah, Last Blood.
But I got to tell you, that 4K edition, that Blu-ray 4K thingy that Snowdub sent me, holy hell, the audio and the visual look amazing in my home theater. Wow. Bam, bam, boom. Talk more about it later tonight. Anyway, sorry to slow up the show. All right.
You're fine, brother. All right. Take care of yourselves and each other. Thank you, Six, for the help and all the other mods. And we'll catch you soon. This will lead you to Nick Weiser's stream after the show.
Woohoo.
Well,